The market of shadows. The space station of Karen Prime was always alive with noise. Light and the smell of strange food drifting through the air. Merchants shouted in 10 different languages, trying to sell glittering stones, glowing liquids, or living creatures trapped in cages. The whole place was built for profit. And everything had a price. Daniel, a human pilot, walked through the crowded bazaar with slow steps. His boots were worn out, his jacket patched too many times, and his eyes tired from long nights without real rest. He had just finished a delivery job, and after paying for fuel and docking fees, he had only a handful of credits left. Not enough for comfort, not even enough for a good meal. But Daniel was used to it. Life in space was hard, and humans often had to fight for every scrap. He had learned long ago to live with little. Still, even he felt the sting of hunger in his stomach. He could have spent his last credits on food, or maybe saved them for the next job. But fate had other plans for him that day. As he passed through a darker corner of the market, he heard laughter, cruel and sharp. A group of aliens stood around a cryopod. Glass covered in frost, inside lay a woman, her skin pale blue, her long hair frozen in place like threads of silver. She looked fragile, almost like a sculpture trapped in ice. Around her, the merchants jeered and mocked. "Look at this one," one alien barked, his scales shining under the dim lights. A relic of some failed empire, frozen and useless. "We tried to sell her for a high price, but no one wants her now." "She's nothing but junk." Another alien threw a piece of cloth on the floor and laughed. "Cover her? Why bother? Who pays for dead beauty?" Daniel stopped, his eyes locked on the woman in the pod. Even frozen, she looked peaceful and sad. Her bare form hidden only by ice, yet none of the merchants cared. They treated her like an object, a decoration for the market. Something inside Daniel stirred. He had seen cruelty before, but this felt different. It felt wrong. He clenched his fists, his heart beating fast. He didn't know who she was. Didn't know if she was alive or just a memory preserved in ice, but he couldn't walk away. "How much?" Daniel asked, his voice steady, though his stomach twisted. The merchants turned, surprised, then laughter filled the air again. "You human? You want her?" The scaled alien sneered. "You don't even have enough credits to buy fuel. What will you do with her?" Daniel ignored the insult. He pulled out his last credits, his hand shook slightly. Because he knew this was madness. With this money gone, he would have nothing. No food, no supplies, no way to survive if another job didn't come quickly. The alien snatched the credits and tossed a bundle of worn clothes at him. "Take them then, fool. Cover her if you want. Waste your last coins on a ghost." Daniel bent down, picked up the bundle, and looked at the woman again, slowly, carefully. He placed the fabric against the cold glass of the pod, as if to shield her from the stares. Around him, more laughter broke out. The human is a romantic. Look at him, dressing a corpse. But Daniel didn't care in that moment. He wasn't thinking about food or survival. He was thinking about dignity. No one else in that market had seen her as a person, only as an item to sell. But Daniel couldn't see her that way. With great effort, he pressed the bundle of clothes into the merchant's arms. "Not for me," he said quietly. "For her." The alien smirked, but Daniel turned away. He guided the pod toward a rented cargo lift, his muscles straining as the frozen chamber scraped against the metal floor. Each step drew more whispers. Some aliens called him mad. Others curious, a few looked with pity, but most just laughed. Daniel kept moving. Refusing to meet their eyes, he reached the docking bay at last. His ship, the Starling, was old and battered. Panels dented, paint long faded, but it was home, and it was the only place he trusted. As the cargo lift lowered the pod inside, Daniel stood in silence. He touched the frost-covered glass, seeing her face up close for the first time. Her features were sharp yet soft. Noble yet tired, even frozen, she carried a strange weight, as if she belonged to something far greater than the market that had mocked her. Daniel whispered, "You don't belong there." He closed the hatch and sealed the ship. His credits were gone, his stomach still empty, and his future uncertain. But he felt something stirring in his chest, a strange mix of fear and purpose. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt like he had done something right. He didn't know who she was, or why she had been frozen. But he knew one thing. He had chosen kindness over survival, and that choice was about to change everything. The Starling drifted in the quiet of space, its old engines humming softly. Daniel sat inside the small med bay, staring at the frost-covered pod. He had pulled it from the market only hours ago, but already it felt like a burden he had carried for a lifetime. His credits were gone, his stomach was empty, and he was left with nothing but a frozen stranger lying silent in his ship. The ship's heating system worked hard to keep the pod stable. Small beads of water began to slide down the glass as the ice slowly melted away. Daniel adjusted the controls, careful not to rush the process. If he revived her too quickly, the shock might kill her, but if he waited too long, she might remain trapped forever. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He wondered why he had done this. Why spend his last credits on someone he didn't even know? Was it pity? Was it anger at the cruel laughter of the merchants? Or was it something else, something deeper? The medbay filled with a hiss, steam rising as the pod released more ice. Daniel's head snapped up, his heart pounded. He stepped closer, pressing his hand against the glass. The woman inside stirred, her fingers twitching, her chest rising and falling slowly. Then her eyes opened. They glowed faintly, not human, not like anything Daniel had seen before. A deep shade of silver blue, sharp yet calm, she gasped for air, pressing her palm against the glass. Her lips moved, but no words came out at first. Only a weak sound, a whisper lost to the hum of the ship. Daniel quickly opened the pod. Cold air rushed out, filling the room. He reached inside and gently pulled her up. Her body trembled, thin and weak from long sleep. She collapsed into his arms. Daniel steadied her, covering her with the bundle of clothes he had carried from the market. "It's all right," he said softly, though he knew she couldn't understand. "You're safe now," the alien woman coughed, her voice raw. She spoke a string of words in a language Daniel couldn't recognize. It was melodic but broken, filled with fear and confusion. Daniel shook his head and raised his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. She looked around, eyes darting at the strange metal walls. Then back at Daniel, her breathing quickened, and she tried to push away. But when she noticed the clothes covering her body, her movement slowed. She touched the fabric, her glowing eyes softening with surprise. "Liara," she whispered at last, her voice fragile but clear. Daniel blinked. He realized she was telling him her name. He repeated it slowly. "Liara." His voice stumbled over the sound, but she nodded weakly. Her gaze lingered on him. Confused but searching, she spoke more words he couldn't understand, pointing first at him, then at herself. Daniel thought for a moment, then tapped his chest. "Daniel," he said. Then he gestured at her. "Liara." A flicker of understanding crossed her face. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest against the chair. Hours passed as Daniel tried to make her comfortable. He gave her sips of water, which she drank slowly. He offered a piece of stale bread, and though she struggled at first, hunger won. She ate carefully, her hands shaking as she brought the food to her lips. Daniel watched in silence. Something inside him grew heavier with every passing moment. This wasn't just a frozen body he had rescued. She was alive, real, and now dependent on him. When the silence of the ship deepened, Liara suddenly reached for his hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were full of fear. She pointed toward the window of the ship, whispering a few broken words Daniel could not understand, but he caught the tremble in her voice. She was afraid of something out there, something beyond the stars. Daniel leaned closer, trying to catch any meaning. "What is it, Liara?" he asked, but she only shook her head, her body curling as if hiding from an invisible shadow. That night, Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the endless dark outside. His ship was small, his supplies low, and his future uncertain. Yet in the medbay behind him, a woman from another world was breathing again because of him. He thought of her eyes when she woke, the way she touched the clothes he had given her. No one else had cared enough to show her dignity. But that small act had reached her, Daniel whispered to himself. "What have I gotten myself into?" His voice was heavy, but there was no regret. He had no way of knowing that the choice he made in the market, the choice to spend his last credits on her, was the start of something far larger, something that would pull him into the heart of a storm. Liara was no ordinary alien, and Daniel was about to discover that the galaxy would not let her go so easily. The Starling drifted through empty space, silent except for the steady hum of its aging engines. Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, watching the stars slide past. Behind him in the small medbay, Liara rested on a bunk, still weak but breathing stronger with every hour. Her silver blue eyes sometimes followed him, curious yet wary. She was alive, but she carried a weight he could not yet understand. For days, Daniel tried to speak with her, Using hand gestures and simple words, slowly, they built a fragile bridge of communication. He pointed to himself and said, "Daniel?" She repeated the sound awkwardly, then smiled faintly. He pointed to her and she whispered, "Liara." The name felt heavier each time, like it belonged to a story he hadn't been told yet. She was no ordinary passenger, Daniel knew that now. She moved with a certain grace even in weakness. Her eyes scanned every detail of the ship, not like a lost traveler, but like someone trained to notice. She flinched whenever a patrol signal appeared on the comm screen, as if the sight of an official emblem burned her memory. Daniel noticed it the first time when a border patrol pinged his ship. He answered casually, voice steady. But behind him, Liara pressed herself into the shadows, trembling, her hands gripping the edge of the chair. She whispered something sharp in her own language, shaking her head furiously. When the patrol moved on without trouble, she collapsed into the seat, her body shaking with relief. Daniel frowned. "Who's after you?" he asked softly. He knew she didn't understand the words, but the tone reached her, her eyes filled with fear, and she grasped his hand with surprising strength. "Please."
"Not return me," she said, the broken words heavy with desperation.
Daniel's heart tightened. She had learned enough English to make her plea clear. Whoever wanted her back was not offering safety. Whoever she was running from something powerful from that moment. Daniel treated her like a secret he had to protect. He adjusted his routes, avoiding major hubs, avoiding long-range scanners. He even shut down the Starling's beacon, making his ship harder to track. The decision cost him jobs and safe docking ports, but he didn't care. Liara began to trust him more. In the quiet hours of space, she tried to teach him fragments of her language, pointing to objects and speaking their names. Daniel repeated them clumsily, earning a soft laugh from her. It was the first time he had heard her laugh, light and fragile, but real. Yet even as small moments of warmth grew between them, shadows remained. Sometimes at night, Daniel woke to hear her whispering in her sleep, the words sharp and fearful, her hands clenched as if fighting unseen enemies. Other times she sat silently by the viewport, staring into the stars with tears glimmering in her eyes. One evening, Daniel found her tracing shapes in the frost on the medbay window. Strange symbols, curling lines and sharp edges. When he asked, she looked startled, then quickly wiped them away. Her eyes begged him not to press further, but the truth could not hide forever. 3 days later, while drifting near a refueling station, Daniel picked up a coded broadcast. The message was short, but the voice was cold. To all patrols, subject confirmed alive, female of House Velerin, priority 1 target, recover at all costs. Daniel froze. His hands clenched the controls. He turned to the medbay. Liara sat there, staring at him with wide eyes. She had heard it too. "House Velerin," Daniel whispered, testing the name. Liara flinched, then slowly nodded. She pressed a hand to her chest, her lips forming the same word. Daniel exhaled slowly. It all made sense now. She wasn't just a lost traveler. She was someone important, someone whose disappearance had shaken powers far beyond his reach. No wonder the patrols hunted her. No wonder she feared being returned. He stepped closer, kneeling so she could see the honesty in his eyes. "You're safe with me," he said firmly, though doubt gnawed at his heart. Could he really keep her safe? A broke human pilot with a failing ship, standing against the weight of an empire. Liara's eyes softened. She touched the clothes he had given her back in the market, her fingers curling into the fabric. Then she whispered, "Daniel, promise." It was the first time she had asked him for anything directly, and it carried the weight of her entire world. Daniel swallowed hard, then nodded. "I promise." From that moment on, Liara was no longer just a passenger. She was his secret, his responsibility, and maybe, just maybe, his purpose. The galaxy might laugh at a human who spent his last credits on a frozen woman, but Daniel knew something they didn't. The moment he covered her with clothes, the moment he chose her dignity over his own survival, his path had changed. Now he was no longer just a pilot. He was the guardian of a secret that could shake empires. The Starling floated quietly through a stretch of deep space, its lights dimmed to avoid drawing attention. Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the empty stars. His ship felt smaller with every day, not because of its size, but because of the secret it now carried. Liara was no longer just a mystery passenger. She was something far more dangerous. She had begun speaking more words of his language, Slow at first, broken and uneven, but growing clearer each day. Daniel helped her with patience, repeating simple phrases. Showing her objects, Liara learned quickly. Her sharp mind picked up words faster than Daniel expected, and slowly, she began to tell him pieces of her story. I was hidden, she said one night, her voice soft. People wanted power, they tried. Kill me. Daniel listened in silence, his chest tightened. He had suspected something like this, but hearing it from her lips made it real. Who are you really? He asked gently. Liara hesitated. Her hands clutched the edge of the blanket draped over her shoulders. Her eyes flickered toward the viewport where the stars drifted past. Finally, she whispered, I am daughter, House Velerin. She paused, searching for words. Empire blood. Throne. The word struck Daniel like a blow. He leaned back in his chair, trying to process it. She wasn't just important. She was royalty, an heir to an alien empire. That explained the coded message. That explained why patrols and hunters searched the stars for her. You're a princess, he said quietly. Liara tilted her head at the word. Then she nodded once. Her expression distant. Yes, but hunted. Her voice trembled, and Daniel could see the pain behind her calm face. She wasn't boasting of power. She was confessing a curse. The throne she spoke of had nearly cost her life. Who betrayed you? Daniel asked, Liara's lips pressed tight. Her silver blue eyes filled with shadows. She traced her fingers along the frost edge of the medbay window, drawing a spiral shape. Family, council, power, she said, the words sharp with bitterness. They freeze me. To sell me. Daniel's stomach twisted. He pictured her trapped in ice, mocked by merchants, treated like an object. His fists clenched. The thought of it filled him with anger. You're safe here, he said firmly, though part of him doubted his own words. Liara looked at him, studying his face, her eyes softened. She reached out and touched his arm lightly. You, kind, she whispered. Then, almost too soft to hear. First, kind, Daniel swallowed hard. He had been many things in life, smuggler, courier, wanderer. But no one had ever looked at him the way she did in that moment, as if he was something rare, something good. Days passed, and with every hour Liara revealed more. She spoke of palaces that floated among the stars, of fleets larger than planets, of councils that ruled with iron. Daniel listened, half disbelieving, yet he saw the truth in her eyes. She was not inventing stories. She was remembering a life stolen from her. But with her whispers came danger one evening. The Starling's sensors picked up a faint signal trailing them. Daniel cursed under his breath. He had been careful, changing routes, shutting down beacons. Yet someone had found their trail. Liara, he said, rushing to the medbay. We're being followed. She stiffened. Her eyes widened with fear. Hunters, she said quickly. Her voice shook. They come for me. Daniel grabbed the controls. Pushing the Starling into a new course, the engines roared. But the old ship was not built for speed. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he worked the controls, scanning for escape routes. Liara sat beside him, gripping the chair. Her breathing fast. They will not stop, she warned. Her voice was steady now, resigned. Until I am dead. Daniel glanced at her, his jaw tightening. He had chosen this path the day he carried her pod out of the market. There was no turning back now. We'll make it, he said, his voice hard. I didn't save you to hand you over. Liara looked at him for a long moment. Then for the first time a faint smile touched her lips. It wasn't the smile of a princess, it was the smile of someone who had found hope. The ship rocked as the signal drew closer. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew the storm was coming. And this time it would not pass easily. Liara whispered a final word, her hand clutching the fabric he had given her in the market. Promise, and Daniel, without hesitation, whispered back, promise. The silence of space shattered when the first blast struck the Starling's shields. The old ship rattled, panels shaking loose. Alarms flashing red across the cockpit. Daniel gritted his teeth and pulled the controls hard. The vessel groaned as it veered away. Through the viewport, 3 small hunter ships appeared, sleek and sharp, their black hulls glowing with crimson lights. They moved like predators, circling the Starling with speed Daniel's ship could never match. Hold on, Daniel shouted. His fingers danced over the controls. He fired the thrusters, trying to break away. The Starling trembled under the strain, but it responded. The hunters gave chase instantly, their weapons charging again. Liara staggered into the cockpit, her silver blue eyes wide with fear. Hunters, she whispered, her voice shaking. They come. For me. Daniel nodded grimly. I figured that out. He slammed a switch. Releasing a burst of flares, bright sparks shot into space, confusing the targeting sensors for a moment. The next blast of enemy fire missed narrowly. The hunters adjusted quickly, breaking into a formation. Daniel cursed under his breath. His old ship was fast enough to run cargo, not outrun assassins. The hunters were playing with him, circling like wolves around a wounded deer. Liara pressed her hands against the console, whispering words Daniel didn't understand. Her eyes glowed faintly. And suddenly strange codes appeared on one of the screens. She looked at him desperately. Comms. Override. Daniel blinked, then realized she was hacking into the enemy's comms with knowledge only she could have. Within seconds, the Starling speakers filled with static, followed by the sharp voice of one hunter captain. Target confirmed. The heir of House Velerin is aboard. Prepare for capture. Do not destroy the vessel. Daniel's stomach twisted. They weren't after him. They wanted her alive. That gave him one small advantage. He could risk moves they couldn't. Liara, Daniel said quickly. Can you jam their sensors? She closed her eyes, whispering more words. Her hands danced across the screen with surprising skill. Daniel had no idea what she was doing, but the enemy ship suddenly flickered on the radar. Vanishing and reappearing, their formation broke for a moment. That's it, Daniel muttered. He seized the chance, pulling the Starling into a steep dive. The hunters fired, but the shot scattered wide. Daniel's hands moved with instinct, every motion sharp and fast. He had flown through asteroid belts, smugglers' lanes, and war zones. He knew how to make an old ship dance. But the hunters were relentless. They regrouped quickly, chasing him into the shadows of a dead moon. The Starling's engines screamed, sparks flying from the panels. Liara gripped the chair, her body shaking as the ship shuddered. They will not stop, she said again, her voice trembling but steady. Daniel glanced at her, his jaw tight. Then neither will I. A sudden flash lit up the dark. Another ship appeared. Larger than the hunters, its massive hull blocked the stars. A warship painted in black and silver. Weapons bristled from its sides, power radiating from every engine. Daniel's breath caught. Oh, hell, Liara's face went pale, her lips parted, and she whispered one word like a curse. Velerin. Daniel's eyes snapped to her. That's your family's ship, she nodded slowly, her voice breaking. Not family. Traitors. The warship loomed closer. Its comms cut through the static, a cold, commanding voice echoing in the cockpit. Pilot, surrender your vessel. Hand over the heir of House Velerin, refuse, and you will be destroyed. Daniel tightened his grip on the controls. He could feel Liara's eyes on him. Filled with fear and trust all at once, his chest ached. He was only a broke pilot with an old ship, facing enemies far stronger than him, but he had given her his word. No one's taking you, he whispered. Almost to himself, the warship charged its weapons, energy glowing along its sides. The hunters spread out, blocking every escape path. The Starling was cornered. Liara grabbed Daniel's hand, her voice urgent. Daniel, please. He met her gaze. Her fingers clutched the fabric of the clothes he had given her back in the market. Her eyes begged him not to give up. Daniel inhaled sharply. His mind raced. He had one chance, one insane idea. The only place the hunters and warship would not follow willingly. The asteroid field. It stretched beyond the dead moon. A storm of spinning rock and debris. Pilots called it suicide to enter. Ships bigger than shuttles rarely came out intact. But Daniel's human instincts told him what to do. He threw the Starling toward the field, engines roaring. The comms exploded with the enemy captain's voice. You fool. That field will tear your ship apart. Daniel grinned tightly. Maybe, but it'll tear yours apart faster. The Starling plunged into the swirling rocks. The hull scraped, alarm screamed, but Daniel's hands were steady. His eyes sharp, Liara clung to the chair. Her heart pounding behind them, the hunters hesitated. Their sleek ships darted closer, but one clipped an asteroid and exploded in fire. The others pulled back, fearful of the chaos. The warship held its distance, unwilling to risk its massive bulk in the storm. Daniel's ship twisted, dodging death by inches. He flew not with caution, but with daring, trusting instincts no alien could match. Liara watched him, her fear turning to awe. The Starling vanished deeper into the asteroid field, leaving the hunters and warships snarling at the edge. Daniel's chest heaved, sweat dripping from his brow. Told you, he muttered. Humans don't quit easy. Liara touched his arm, her voice soft but full of wonder. Daniel, you different? He gave her a tired smile. You'll see, Liara. They haven't met a stubborn human before. The asteroid field swallowed the starling whole. Rocks the size of mountains spun slowly through the void, each one capable of crushing the small ship in an instant. Daniel gripped the controls tightly, sweat dripping down his forehead. His eyes flicked from the radar to the viewport, calculating every movement in fractions of seconds. The ship rattled as a smaller rock scraped across the hull. Sparks showered the cockpit, alarms blaring. Liara clung to her seat, her silver blue eyes wide with terror. Daniel, ship, break, she cried. Not if I can help it, Daniel answered, his voice steady despite the chaos. His hands moved with instinct, pulling levers, twisting the ship through narrow gaps. He had flown smuggling runs through dangerous zones before, but never something this insane. The hunters stayed at the edge of the field, their sleek ships darting in and out. They fired a few shots, but the rocks scattered their aim. One unlucky hunter tried to chase too far. An asteroid smashed into it, turning it into a fireball that vanished into the dark. Liara gasped, watching the explosion reflect in her eyes. She turned to Daniel, her voice trembling. You do this on purpose, Daniel smirked. Sometimes the best way to live is to go where no sane person would follow. He pulled the Starling into a tight roll, narrowly avoiding two colliding boulders. The ship shook, metal screaming, but they made it through. Liara pressed her hands together, whispering words in her language. Daniel didn't understand them, but he felt the desperation in her tone. When he glanced at her, he saw not only fear but also awe. She had grown up among fleets and armies, yet she had never seen someone fly with madness and courage like this. The Starling's warning lights flashed red across the console. One engine was overheating, fuel reserves dropping fast. Daniel cursed under his breath. We can't keep this up forever. Liara leaned forward, her eyes sharp now. Daniel, you trust me? She asked suddenly. He blinked, surprised. Do I have a choice? She reached across the console, her hands moving quickly. She typed strange symbols into the system. Daniel almost stopped her, but then the sensors lit up. A hidden path through the asteroid field appeared on the screen. A narrow trail marked by stable gaps. How? Daniel began, but Liara cut him off. Valeran fleets. Train in fields. I know routes, Daniel grinned, shaking his head. So you do have some tricks. He adjusted the controls, following the path she had revealed. The Starling slipped between spinning rocks with slightly less chaos, though danger still pressed in on every side. The warship remained at the edge, its massive frame unwilling to enter. Its captain's voice hissed over the comms. Pilot, you cannot run forever. The field will kill you both. Daniel muted the channel. They always underestimate humans, he muttered. His eyes stayed locked on the path, every nerve focused. Minutes felt like hours. The ship rattled, the engines groaned, but they kept moving forward. At last, the sensors cleared. Showing open space ahead, Daniel pushed the thrusters, and with one final shudder, the Starling burst free of the asteroid field. Silence filled the cockpit, broken only by the soft hum of the engines. Daniel leaned back, breathing hard. His hands shook from the effort, but a tired smile spread across his face. We made it. Liara stared at him, her chest rising and falling quickly. She whispered, Impossible. Then slowly, a small smile touched her lips. But, human, Daniel laughed weakly. That's about right. For a moment, the tension lifted. Liara's smile stayed, her eyes shining not just with relief but with respect. She had been born to power, surrounded by warriors and lords, yet it was a broke pilot with a failing ship who had saved her with nothing but stubborn skill. The peace didn't last long, though. Warning lights blinked across the console. The Starling's hull integrity was down to 70%, fuel nearly gone. One engine sputtered and coughed before stabilizing again. Daniel sighed. We're alive, but we're not safe if another warship finds us. We won't be able to run this time. Liara touched his arm gently. Daniel, you saved me, she said. Her words were still broken, but her meaning was clear. I trust you. Daniel met her gaze. Something stirred in his chest. Heavier than duty, warmer than fear, he nodded. Then we'll figure this out together. He didn't know where the next safe place would be. He didn't know how long they could survive with failing engines and empty supplies. But he knew one thing. He had promised her safety, and he would fight the whole galaxy if he had to. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, hunters still searched somewhere. The Velaran warship plotted its next move. But inside the Starling, a bond had formed between human and alien. Fragile yet unbreakable, Liara whispered softly. Almost like a vow, not alone anymore. Daniel looked at her, his tired smile returning. Not alone, he agreed. The gamble had worked. They had escaped the hunters, defied the warship, and survived the impossible. But Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had not given up its chase, and the true storm was still ahead. The Starling drifted slowly through empty space. Its engines weakened from the deadly run through the asteroid field. Daniel sat in the cockpit, hands still resting on the controls. His body was tired, but his mind refused to rest. The silence of victory felt thin, fragile, as if danger still hid just beyond the stars. Behind him, Liara stepped into the cockpit. Her movements were steadier now, her strength returning day by day. She looked around the worn panels, the flickering lights, the old metal walls of the Starling. To most, it was nothing but a broken ship. But to her, it had become a sanctuary. Safe, she said softly, as if testing the word. Daniel gave a tired smile. For now, he answered. His voice was rough, heavy with exhaustion. Yet when he looked at her, something in his chest lightened. He had saved her not just once, but many times, and each time the weight of the galaxy grew heavier on his shoulders. Liara walked closer, her silver blue eyes shining with quiet strength. Daniel, she began carefully, I tell you. Truth. Daniel raised an eyebrow. More truth than what I already know. She nodded, taking a deep breath. I am not only heir, she said slowly, her words broken but clear. If I live, empire stands. If I die, empire falls. Daniel leaned back, stunned. He had expected she was important, but not this. He rubbed a hand across his face. So it's not just a throne, you're holding an entire empire together. Liara lowered her head, her voice trembling. Yes, but hunted by my own blood, they fear me, they fear my right. She clenched her hands, her voice turning sharp. If I return alone, they kill me. If I hide, empire breaks. Daniel stared at her. The choice was impossible. She was trapped between death and destruction. And somehow he was now part of that impossible fate. Silence filled the cockpit for a long moment. Only the soft hum of the engines broke it. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice firm. Then you won't face it alone. Liara's eyes lifted to him. Wide and searching, you're not cargo. Daniel continued. You're not just a passenger, you're crew now. And if the galaxy wants to come after you, then they'll have to go through me first. Her lips parted, trembling as if she wanted to speak but could not. She touched the clothes she wore, the same bundle of fabric he had given her in the market. Her fingers curled tightly into it. Remembering that first act of kindness, her eyes softened, filling with something warmer than gratitude. Daniel, she whispered, her voice breaking. You, different from all, he gave a tired chuckle. That's what humans do best. We're stubborn enough to do the things no one else dares. The Starling rattled suddenly, warning lights flashing. The damage from the chase still lingered. One engine coughed and sputtered. Daniel frowned. We need repairs, or this ship won't last much longer. Liara hesitated, then spoke with quiet certainty. There is a place, hidden world. Safe harbor. Daniel looked at her carefully. You sure? She nodded. Old allies, not loyal to council. They hide from hunters. They help us. Daniel sighed with relief. Then that's where we'll go. He adjusted the controls, setting a course toward the hidden coordinates she gave him. The ship groaned as it turned, but it kept moving. As the stars shifted outside the viewport, Liara stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Thank you, she whispered. Daniel glanced at her. For what? For seeing me, she said simply. Her voice shook. Not as prize, not as throne. Not as ghost in ice you saw me. Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to say something clever, but the words caught. Instead, he just nodded. And I'll keep seeing you no matter what comes. Liara's eyes glistened. For the first time since she had woken from the cryopod, she allowed herself to breathe without fear. She was not alone anymore. The Starling limped forward into the unknown, battered but unbroken inside it. A human who had spent his last credits on a frozen stranger and an alien heir, who had once been mocked as worthless, now sat side by side, bound by trust and a promise stronger than fear. Somewhere out there, warships still searched. Hunters still prowled and traitors still plotted. But Daniel and Liara were no longer just prey. Together they were something new, a spark, a beginning. One act of kindness had turned into a bond that might change the fate of an empire. Liara looked out at the endless stars, her voice soft but steady. A new beginning, Daniel smiled faintly. Yeah, he whispered, a new beginning.